I'll just, I'll let you decide on who you want to call.
Oh, yeah. No.
I figured you did.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just going to be very, very brief. So, yep, very, very brief.
Sure.
Well, good morning. It is, as the speaker always says, it's a great day in Georgia and a great day to be a Georgian. Amen. That's right. And it truly is a great day to be in Georgia today, and we are honored to have the 33rd Secretary of Agriculture with us, Secretary Brooke Rollins. Welcome to Georgia. Thank you for being with us. You know, the last 4 years have been pretty tough, especially for our Georgia farmers, and especially the last 2 years. It's been very difficult in agriculture, not just here in Georgia, but across the country. And we know that with the Trump administration, with Secretary Rollins coming on board, we have an opportunity to ensure that agriculture gets back on its feet and heads in the right direction, ensure that our farmers and producers all across this state and all across America will continue to be successful. And I have full confidence in the Trump administration and Secretary Rollins to do just that. And so we're just honored to host her today for a brief visit to Georgia to show her a little bit about Georgia agriculture, and so she can take that back and ensure that those voices are being heard. So without further ado, from small town Glen Rose, Texas, and a person that has had agriculture at her heart for a long, long time, please help me welcome the 33rd Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Brooke Rollins. Madam Secretary? Yes, ma'am.
You're awesome. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner and Mr. Speaker and everyone that's here. Just a couple quick comments and then we'll take some questions. The first thing I want to say is what a joy it is to be here in Georgia with all of you. We are doing a full day. We're meeting with some farmers. We're touring some facilities. I just finished giving a keynote speech at the Electric Cooperative, big event that's happening just a few minutes from here. So I've been on the job. Today is 3 weeks exactly. I think this is my 7th state, but the state of Georgia is so important for so many reasons. The amazing elected officials, state legislators, state senators and representatives behind me. We just had a great roundtable talking about the importance of innovation from the states and the states leading the way, but also talking about our farmers and our ranchers and our ag producers that are really hurting right now. So I'm sure some of you will have some questions on that, but again, what a joy to be here. For a Texas girl to get to Georgia is really awesome. So thanks so much, and we'll open it up for questions. Yes, sir. The current trade renegotiation that's happening right now from the White House, I think we all know that President Trump, the minute he came down the escalators in 2015, has been talking about tariffs as a part of his toolkit to make America great again. We saw it work in the first term, but obviously there was some consequences for our agriculture community in that first term. And the USDA, with the great Sonny Perdue, stepped up and worked to make those consequences whole. I would suspect if the same result occurs this time around, that there will be the same relief there. We're working on preparing for that. My hope is that as the Secretary of Agriculture and our amazing ag producers that we represent at USDA, the President is extremely focused on what this will mean to our farmers and our ranchers. You probably watched his joint session to Congress, but really his State of the Union a week and 2 days ago, and he talked about the farmers multiple times throughout. If you're tracking closely, you know he got in a very colorful argument with Justin Trudeau of Canada over dairy tariff import costs. He is hyper-focused, A, on making America great again, B, on restructuring the economy to make sure that every American can succeed and thrive and prosper, but C, from my perspective, on what this means for our farmers and our ranchers and our ag communities. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, the $1 billion that was, well, first, let me back up, and then I'll talk directly about that. This president was elected on November 5th with every single swing state in the popular vote. That was a mandate, and every single category of voter moved toward the freedom, free market, America First agenda on that election day. And the president and alongside his cabinet believe very sincerely that that mandate includes a government, a federal government that is leaner, that is more efficient, that serves the people better, and that returns power to the people. Our founders, when they wrote the Constitution, never envisioned a federal government that was so big. And I think that what all of you are seeing, no matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat or independent or what side of the aisle you are on, I think we all would have to agree that $600,000 of taxpayer money being sent to research the effects of menstrual cycles in transgender men, which was a real thing and was a USDA grant that we just canceled, is not okay. Our taxpayers should not be funding things like that. So as we are reimagining and reconfiguring and restructuring the federal government, that includes looking very hard at programs that on their face may sound really, really good, but are they actually reaching the intended recipients? Are they actually doing what the taxpayers have asked us to do, which is to use their tax dollars as smartly and efficiently as possible? On that particular program, that was a new COVID-era program. It was specific to COVID only. It had already been, multiples of grants had already been moved out under that program. So what we pulled back was money that had not been spent yet and had not been committed yet. So thank you for that question. Yes, sir. You, and then we'll go to you next. Yeah, thank you. In fact, the keynote I gave this morning, that particular grant program, but others like the New Era program and others have a lot of people waiting to see what's going to happen with those. We are coming to the tail end of the review process at both the United States Department of Agriculture and at the White House, as we are looking at, as we believe the voter asked us to do, every single line of every single dollar of every single grant that has been discussed and talked about. This is not a new statement for me. I've said in the past that if our farmers and ranchers especially have already spent money under a commitment that was made, the goal is to make sure they are made whole. We're really looking at forward-leaning grants right now. We should know more and have more of an announcement on that program and others by the end of this week or next week. Thank you. Yes. Yes, and I was in North Carolina last week looking at some of the devastation there. That was in terms of the wildfires, and as we're moving into wildfire season, which I know isn't as big of a deal here in Georgia, but still important. So this trip is looking at some of that as well, but in terms of as it relates to our ag community, those funds, and I think you're talking about the ones that Congress passed at the end of last year around Christmas time, the disaster and emergency relief, both for Helene but also for our farmers that are hurting. That money will begin to move in the next few weeks. We were given a deadline by Congress, which isn't often met, but for me it was very important we meet it, of March 21st. We will actually beat that deadline. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming days. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. My message today, yesterday, during my confirmation hearing and moving forward is that this is the United States of America, that no child should ever go hungry in this country, that for those of us that were raised by single moms in tougher circumstances understand that sometimes that the government safety net is the only safety net and how important that is. I think that from my perspective, the SNAP program, the food stamp program, in normal terms, but SNAP is the government term, that becomes a big issue as we're renegotiating the Farm Bill moving forward. That's part of the Farm Bill. It's also a massive part of the USDA budget. So we will be looking at it very closely. The original intent of ensuring that children receive nutritious, which is another big issue right now, nutritious food through the SNAP program, through food stamps, that will be a priority alongside Secretary Bobby Kennedy. But also on the numbers side, I think it's important to note that SNAP, under the last administration, the Biden team put an additional 30 to 40% funds into the SNAP program. It really grew in massive ways. So again, we are, under this new administration, looking at every program, at every line item, to ensuring that it is reaching its intended purpose. And for me, making sure SNAP is doing that in the best possible way is a priority. Thank you. Yes, sir. And we'll do 2 more questions, y'all. 2 more. Yes, in fact, we just had a great conversation about that. Your elected officials are very, in the best way, have brought that to our attention. I'll take a step back and just say this too. This cabinet under President Trump is very unusual in that we all have known each other and worked together before. We're all extremely committed to the president's vision of making America great again. The H-2A program is obviously a Department of Labor program. Lori Chavez-DeRemer was just confirmed. I think she's our final cabinet member that got confirmation just yesterday or the day before. That program runs through labor, but even within the week of both of us being announced, I was calling her and talking to her about working together to fix that program and to make it so that our Georgia farmers that use it, and rancher farmers, and then other farmers around the country that use it, that it will be more streamlined, easier to use. And we're going to take a hard look at some of the numbers and how the wages have gone up, and I think that's really compromised a lot of our farmers' ability to farm effectively, especially when they're operating on such thin margins. So the answer to that question is 100% yes, we are on it, and I think you'll see some good moves on that moving forward. All right, one more question. Yes, in the back. Right there, yes. And I think the pecan farmers, I think the peanut farmers, I think the blueberry farmers, I think that's true across almost every lane of our agriculture industry. One of Georgia's favorite sons, if I may say, the country singer Luke Bryan, actually called me about this very issue because he's got some good friends that are in these industries, and certainly realized that after, perhaps, especially the last 4 years, but it's been a long run for these farmers, many of them who have not made a healthy profit in a really, really long time. There's a lot of reasons for that. Recently, the cost of input is up 30%. Our trade deficit around the world, when we left the last White House under President Trump, there was a 0 trade deficit. Today, after 4 years, it's $49 billion in trade deficit. Then you layer on the disasters on top of that. Then you layer on labor issues, and then the uncertainty, the ability to get capital to expand or even to stay in business is at stake. It's just one thing after another. And I think my message is this, that President Trump has such a heart and such a devotion to America's farmers and ranchers. He knows that before anyone else in this country, that group of people was with him from the beginning. In the last election, and not to make this about politics, but I just want to underscore the point of how important this is to President Trump and to me. In the last election, that community in rural America supported him close to 90%. No other community comes even close to supporting the president and his vision. This community has been very patient, but they're hurting, and we understand that. And as the president moves into these tariff renegotiations, as I mentioned, I've seen his passion firsthand in arguing with some colorful language on dairy tariffs and on ensuring that, that we've got the seat at the table we need, that he understands. On the potash, the fertilizer question from Canada, we've got our farmers trying to figure out their planting season, and a 25% tariff on potash would have been devastating. So we brought that down. The USMCA exceptions to those ag products that are under USMCA, at least for the short term, are not impacted by those tariffs. So it is hopefully one of many steps that we're making to ensure we do everything we can to see our American farmers and ranchers and our ag community thrive like never before. God bless you all. God bless Georgia. What a great day to